Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Joining me today is Beth Slazak from Creative Education Foundation. Thanks for joining us, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We connected a few weeks back, and I really loved what I was hearing about the Creative Education Foundation, and I'd love for my listeners to hear a little bit more. So if you could start maybe about, introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about you and what you do with the Creative Education Foundation, I would be super happy.
Okie dokie. So I am, it's like weird introducing yourself. I like long walks in the park.
Yes, me too.
I am kind of like I came to this world in the most roundabout way possible. I was this stay-at-home soccer mom for a long time, and then I needed to get a job, and I had a bachelor's degree in history and dance. And boy, doesn't the world just beat a path to your door. So I went back to school and I got my social studies teacher certification, and then I'm in New York State, so I needed to have a master's degree, and I found creative studies fit that hole. Mm-hmm. So I am somebody who wildly supports creativity in other people, and I will tell you right now, like, everyone, when they hear what I do and who I work for, they're like, oh, that's so cool. I'm not creative. And I'm like, are you using the word creative and meaning like artistic? Because there are wildly creative people who aren't really good at drawing. So I'm kind of a wild and crazy person, I guess. Very shy and quiet. Not at all. I'm a mom of 3 awesome people. They're people now. Like, and I do actually like long walks and reading murder mysteries. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a whole genre called cozy mysteries. Mm-hmm. And I love me a set in the 1920s in London female detective series all the time.
Nice. Who's your favorite author?
I love Agatha Christie. Mm-hmm. But my mom is a retired school librarian, and my grandmother, I think, was like she was definitely the matriarch of the family, and she was a voracious reader. Mm-hmm. Like, she probably went through 5 or 10 paperbacks a week. She had one at the dining room table where she'd sit in the morning with her coffee. She had one in her bedroom. She had one on the couch, and so I grew up in a reading house. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, no, my mother's a library worker. She's head of circulation in a library, so she's an avid reader, and that's kind of like where I also sort of went when I finally ended up with my degree. It was a major, in English and a minor in education, as I went through the whole creative slew of majors at Fredonia. But can you tell us a little bit about what your foundation does and who it serves?
Yeah, remember, you open that floodgates just
okay. That's why you're on the show.
Yes,
so
I absolutely obnoxiously love my job because I get to do so many cool things. Mm-hmm. So the Creative Education Foundation, it's a nonprofit. It was started in the 50s by Alex Osborn and Sid Parnes. And Alex Osborn is one of the original, like, if you've ever seen the TV show Mad Men, that like the advertising Mad Men of the 50s,
Mhm.
he was one of them. In fact, that TV show references BBDO advertising firm, and he's the O from it.
Okay.
So as the story goes, he was working with his creative team all the time, and he's like, I feel like things that they're doing could be applied to real life.
Mhm.
So he ended up partnering with Sid Parnes, who was academic, and they formed this organization, and they're the ones that created brainstorming. So anytime you see that word used, like, that started in Buffalo, New York, which
That's
we are
awesome.
more than blizzards and chicken wings, although we're fantastic blizzards and chicken
We're
wings.
great at brainstorming too.
Yeah, and we invented brainstorming. You're welcome, world. So eventually it kind of like, it got very big, and so there's an academic arm, which is the education program at Buffalo State. They do the grad degree, and they do an undergrad minor there, and then the Creative Education Foundation itself.
Mhm.
So things that we do, our mission is to ignite creativity worldwide and to bring the mindset and skill set and tool set to
Mhm.
the world. So that's why we do all of the like all of the things that we do. We do so many different things. A big part of our work, I guess, is the Creative Problem Solving Institute, CPSI, so it's called CIPSI.
Mhm.
And in the before times, it was you remember 2019? That was a thing where you would like see people. So for 60 plus years, they've been doing this training conference. Um, and when the world is healthy, it's like 5 days, and we, for the past 6 or 7 years, I think, it's been at the University of Buffalo's Ellicott complex, which is a little satellite just off their north campus. Um, and we like take over that space. This year and last year, it's been virtual.
Mhm.
So it's gone from 5 days to the month of June. And so like the virtual one, they're all sessions that have to do somehow with creative thinking. Uh, then things that we also do is we run foundations of creative problem solving training, and that's it comes with an assessment, so you can be certified in foundations. And then there's also tools of creative problem solving that you can be certified in. And so my coworker Missy and I are the ones who hold that space. And then we have fantastic faculty who do the teaching for those certified programs. And then the rest of the time, we're really doing like working with businesses or organizations that want to either be trained in creative problem solving or facilitated through creative problem solving. So we've done training with a Boys and Girls Club, not Western New York, different state, different businesses. I don't know if I have the ability to say their name, but
You
if
can
you
say
like colored pencils, you probably know this company. Work with school districts when we're live and in person. That's one thing. Surprisingly, with an organization named Creative Education Foundation, we didn't start working with schools until like the past couple years.
Mhm.
And ideally, we get to go in and do like a professional development training with the teachers. And then the rest of the week, Missy and I will go into like grade level teacher meetings and help them there. Or even we've gone into the classrooms and led sessions with the students
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. Hold on, sorry. My my Roomba It's coming there.
We got to keep everything clean, even during the podcast. This is a clean podcast, so let's get that Roomba through there, right?
This is our work from home life now. We get
Yes.
interrupted by robots.
Well, and other things, I'm sure. So, no, but you were saying it took you a little while to get into schools, and yeah, and schools in general, a lot of times, even though they're designed to encourage creativity, aren't always the most creative with their own like administration. So it's very hard and slow with change.
And there's like such a hard balance that I firmly believe, by and large, almost every teacher there is like working their tuchus off for
Right.
students and trying to walk the tightrope of inspiring education and knowledge for their students, and then also having to meet state testing criteria. And that's wildly politicized issue, but for better or for worse, it is a stipulation that teachers have to deal with right now. So they still have to deal with it. And basically, we just love giving them like tools and techniques to help both of those. Because the more students are engaged, the more they're retaining information, and especially if they're more engaged, the more likely they are to seek out information. And having ownership of information helps test scores down the line. So it's all good. And a lot of the work, there are a bunch of studies about creativity in children. And like, if you ever feel bad about yourself, start volunteering in like a kindergarten classroom. Because the first time you go in, like, you're a zoo animal, and they're like, oh, wow. The next time you go in, they remember you, and you are a freaking rock star, like screaming and crying, oh my gosh, hi, I know you.
Yep. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, so
yeah.
And every now and then, I don't think I've done it in Delavan, but I would go in and play guitar for the kids. And so like, if you ever like wanted to feel like a rock star, that is the place to do it, because I'm a dabbler of guitar. Now I sing pretty well, but guitar, maybe not so much. And I remember one time I was going in for my daughter's, I think it was UPK class, and I didn't know that they were inviting all these adults and stuff like that. And I'm like, holy moly. Well, we're going to sing Farmer in the Dell. And I might be out of key now because I'm super nervous. And it's funny because I used to perform. I don't know why that threw me off, but it definitely did.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I totally see what you're talking about. My wife says whenever she has, and guests are kind of a thing of the past right now, but when she does have a guest in there, how amazed the students are. And a lot of times that's like, a great way to introduce how you're supposed to behave, because they have that special guest coming in and everyone's all so. But that's really cool that like you guys come in there and help with the education portion of it too, because teachers do need assistance and support and whatnot. But how I guess how do people pay for the services? Is it like free? How does that work?
So when the pandemic hit, like, we were kind of lucky because we are not like federally funded at all.
Okay.
So anytime though like grants disappeared, that didn't affect us that much. We're fee for service. So businesses all have like professional training development budget lines. Schools, we work with them for either, they do have to offer training for their teachers. You need to help keep teachers functioning well. And in New York State, we are CTLE certified. So any training we do helps with teachers getting their extending ed credits.
Okay.
Which that was a quick 1.5 process. There's definitely like DNA samples somewhere in Albany of all of us.
Yes. Working with the state is a long process, no matter what you're doing to work with the state.
But usually school districts it's easier for them to get granting to bring us in than it is for us to get grants, because we do training. So, there's grants to like feed kids or get
Right.
kids books, but there's less grants to provide training for people. But school districts can get grants to bring in somebody, and they
Right.
can use that grant to pay us. And my boss, she is uh, a nonprofit expert. Like, that's how
Mm.
she became our executive director. She knows all like the nonprofit world, and she's written a grant or bajillion in her life, and done that kind of fundraising. And then Missy Carvin and I are the content experts in deliberate creativity and innovation training. So Beth is my boss is also named Beth, which makes things super easy and non-confusing, and we don't get emails meant for each other all the time. But she's usually pretty good about helping schools write grants, because it's not fun.
Right.
So she's got really good grant chops, and she's always on the lookout for grants. If she sees something that like a school district could use, she's like, hey, I saw this might be good for you.
Right.
And there's no school district that's ever been like, stop finding grants for us. They're all like, ooh, thanks.
That's awesome. That's another little side thing that you guys do is find money for schools. That's awesome.
Yeah. we have like, because of the talent pool, that we're a small organization, but because of how it is, like, yeah, Beth has like a lot of grant chops. Missy, my coworker, worked in like grew up working in qualitative research.
Right.
So she's got that. Missy and I both have been improvisers for huge portions. I used to work with Comedy Sports, which is an international thing. So we'll do like applied improv sessions at school districts. If we're at a district like for that week, a lot of times they'll have like a parent teacher night type thing, and we'll come in and do applied improv with families so that they can practice getting a creativity mindset, like yes and accepting, and then teaching them different activities to do with their kids that help keep that going. Fourth grade is where statistically you get more of a slump in creative thinking in students, because like if you went into your wife's kindergarten classroom and said, who's an artist, everybody, they'd have their hands up. Who's going to be an astronaut? Everybody's going to have their hands. Like, they're there for it all. And then in by fourth grade, you've started to have to learn concrete ideas, because you need that for humanity. We need to know that 1 + 3 = 4. So we kind of lose 1 + 3 could equal B.
Right.
And you need to have like, this is how we have decided to spell words, and this is math concepts that we've all agreed on. Right. But you need to help like ramp it back up so that later on they can look at problems and challenges and view them in different ways that help lead to solutions.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see that as people get older, their acceptance of creativity sometimes lessens, and then you think about the business world, and what I really like about like your service and what I know about it is there is a lot of opportunity for creative problem solving in business, but there's not a lot of people that sort of accept creative solutions. So it's kind of like that thing where, there's people that sort of grow out of it. And I don't know if they're afraid or they just don't think it's going to work. But I like to, I'm one of those people that I just kind of remain creative through my entire career, to the point where I feel like sometimes, I'm over creative with approaching some problems and stuff like that. But you mentioned, you mentioned how, I could be an astronaut, with the students and stuff like that. And I just know that there's a person that came in, I facilitated a career support group, and they came in and were talking about how, men versus women, when they approach a job search that, you know, women will discount themselves from certain positions just because like, I have that, I don't have that. But men are more apt to go like, yeah, I have that. Oh, I'll just put it in. I think it'll work. You know, yeah, I could do these two things.
Googled it once.
Like me, I'll look at the thing and be like, astronaut? I could do that. I like stars, you know, I can fly. I can fly the
I'm going to drive a car. A rocket ship's pretty much
fine. I don't like spinning rides, but I'm sure I can get past that whole, you know, centrifugal force thing. It's great. So
it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
But no, I think it's important for organizations like yours to kind of go into you know, businesses and places and kind of remind everyone about their creativity and how useful it can be, you know.
There's two things that we like call people on all the time. One is going for your first solution.
Mm-hmm.
Like your first solution might not be your best. If you think about like your first significant other, maybe you could have had a lifetime of beauty with them, but generally speaking, we look back and we're like, whoa, dodged that bullet. that was not my best. I could do better. And it's the same with our ideas. Like we tend to go for that first, this is my challenge, this is what I'll do to fix it. And then half the time we end up being like, okay, so now this is my challenge again, because you're using ideas that you've used before or somebody else has used, or a lot of times you're solving for a symptom and not for the challenge.
Right.
Like continuing to take Tylenol all the time for my headaches will help my headaches, but maybe going to the eye doctor and getting my script will fix me having headaches.
Right. Finding what the problem actually is.
What the problem actually is, and then coming up, like digging deeper for more innovative solutions, because we do tend to live rut thinking, which is why I have seen every single episode of Big Bang Theory, at least a dozen times, because we lean towards that safe and comfortable, which if we're solving challenges and we're staying in that rut, that's why we're solving the same challenge over and over again. Buying an exercise video will not help me lose weight. And yet somebody comes over and like, oh, bar, I can do that. Okay.
Oh man, you just reminded me of a dozen SNL episodes. Little skits with exercising and oh my gosh. So can you take me through like a typical, you know, service that you do for a company?
Sure. We're doing a training with some teachers coming up in a couple weeks. So for this group, we're incorporating foresight assessments. And foresight looks at its psychometric assessment in the area, in how you face challenges. So there are there's 4 different types. You can be one of the 4, you can be 2 of them, you can be 3, you can be all 4, but it helps you to understand how you look at a challenge and then how other people look at a challenge, because they probably don't look at it the same, which means they're not trying to drive you crazy. They're just coming from a different space.
Right.
So we send out that assessment. They take like 15 minutes. It's all online. So they do that work beforehand. Then, right now everything's virtual. So we'll meet with them. We will talk about the kind of the pillars of creative problem solving. So divergent and convergent thinking, what they are and how you need to do them at different times. Divergent is coming up with all of the possibilities. So like we were talking about brainstorming, that's a tool of divergent thinking, coming up with all of the ideas, doing all of that. And then convergent, which is a little more critical. Okay, which of these meet our criteria? We tend to do both at the same time. I have an idea. No, we've tried that already. Well, how about this idea? No, that won't work. And when you do them at the same time, it's like putting your feet on the gas and the brake together. It doesn't get you where you need to go. So separating those a lot of people who complain about brainstorming are like, oh, it doesn't get you anywhere. I'm like, well, no, because it's just the gas pedal. If you don't add a brake to it, if you don't add some convergent critical thinking, then no, it like gathering all of the ingredients for a cake does not get you a cake. You need to do a couple things after that. So those two pillars, and then phrasing challenges as questions is a pillar, and praising first is a pillar. Probably phrasing challenges as questions is the biggest like brain hack that we share with people, because that sets you up. If it's a question, you can't help but try and answer it. So if you turn it into an open-ended question, you start getting into a solution thinking mindset. And this is maybe the best tip that we give parents ever, because if you are a parent, you may have heard this, I'm bored. You're like, what might be all the things you can do right now? And if they're of a certain age, I usually tag on before I start assigning chores. It's amazing how many ideas they can come up with. So taking statements and turning them into open-ended questions leads to an entire world of potentials. And then praise first, which is just picking out what you like about ideas. And that we do because when you come at somebody with a no, it shuts down their thinking. And I mean, worst case, like you get defensive people, and then you're like, fine, I'm never, don't like, you don't need that. And that's another like great parenting thing too, because what it sounds like is what I like about that idea. So my coworker Missy has an 8th grader and a 4th grader. And so she gets things like, Mommy, can we go for ice cream? She's like, no, wait. What I like about that is that you want to do something with the family and you want to have like a special moment together. So how about we take a walk around the park? You know, it leads to her criteria of, I don't want to spoil your dinner. I can't afford to go get ice cream 7 times a day or a week. But these are the things that I like about that. And we can do that. And that it just helps you get further along without leaving carnage behind. And it really is just helps you get to what your criteria is. Because a lot of times you're starting on something and you're like, I don't know. I don't like what's going on now, but I don't know what should happen, or I don't know why. So having that, what I like about that is it just helps you find, like what I like about that is it's going to be budget neutral, or what I like about that is it's going to involve cross-functionality, things that organizations are usually looking for. So we covered those. Then we go through the 4 stages of creative problem solving, which are clarifying. That's that finding out what the real problem is.
Right.
What's happened before? Who is involved? What's our timeline on this? Gathering a lot of data, a lot of like, I wants, I wishes. Then you go to ideation, and this is where like you're pushing for more ideas because that first third is not your best third necessarily. So, and when you get in ideation and you're pushing like kind of, I call it like the desperation level, you'd be surprised at the innovation that comes out of pure desperation.
Right. Well, you think about like, it was always amazing to me that I could write a paper that I spent 6 to 7 days on, and my professor would be like giving me a B or even a lower grade for it. And then I write a paper overnight because it's like the last thing. Oh my gosh, I got to write this paper still. And I get like an A+. So like out of your desperation, you get that like creativity, and you're like, oh, I could do this. And, your grammar might not be awesome, but hey.
Well, and when you're at that desperation level, what happens is you start turning off your prefrontal cortex that says, nope, that's dumb. Because you're like, we just need to if I'm doing a facilitation, I'm like, we've been working on this for a while. I'm like, okay, I just need 20 more ideas. And people are like, are you kidding me? I have never said 20 more ideas and not gotten 22 at least.
Yeah.
And that you stop correcting yourself or censoring yourself.
Right.
And you might not have a brilliant idea, but what you say might trigger something in Nick.
Yeah.
And then Nick will have a brilliant idea. So you like push for all kinds of crazy ideas. Then you start to pick like, based on our criteria, what do I really like? And this is where we've got to be very cautionary about, don't go back to what's comfortable.
Right.
Look at what you really need and because we can take crazy and work it into elegant. But if it's dead and boring, it is so hard to bring that bad boy back to life.
Right.
So go for the wild and unusual, because possibilities are endless. And let's work on that. And then the next is developing your solution into something that is magnificent. Finding ideas are little seedlings. Developing is where you start adding like some water and some fertilizer and some sun and turning it into a beautiful oak tree. And then implementation, which is, all right, who's doing what and when, and who's checking on them, and how do we know what looks like done to us? So we go through those, and that's where foresight comes in, because those are the 4 preferences that people have strength around. So clarifiers, those are those people that they've got a couple questions and then 17,000 questions later. Ideators are like, oh, so we could do this. Have you tried this? What about if we did that? Would you like? I think we could do that. Developers are like, editors make great developers. They're really good at like details and what are the holes in this solution so that we can plug them. And then implementers are like, let's get it done now. It's already done, never mind.
I did that. While you're talking, I did it all.
Yeah, it's been done.
Yeah.
So you've got preferences around those, and we go through and we do some exercises to help you see what your preferences look like and how it works out. And then we'll teach them like some tools to use, techniques to use. So that's what an average training looks like.
Well, I mean, so many stories went through my head about past supervisors and past teams that I've been on, and kind of seeing those stages and seeing and remembering where some of those people probably were laying in their role. And, one of the most significant things I thought of when you were talking was, I kind of early in my career, I was on a team where change was like encouraged, like proposals for change. And it's this big grand process, here's your bringing your proposal and we'll talk about it and da, 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 da. And a couple of the people that had been there for a while, like saw how excited I was. I'm like, oh, cool. I can make changes or whatever. So I came up and did a proposal and they were sort of laughing on the side and I didn't know exactly why, but whatever. It took me a while, got it in there. And then, the supervisor took a look at it and was like, yeah, we tried this already. It didn't work. Thanks. That was basically it, and that's why they were laughing, because like, we used to do that. We used to give some, propose a change or like, hey, this would work better. But what it really came down to is either we tried that before or, it's not going to work, or, it kind of also sort of came down to, I don't want to change anything because that's more work.
Yeah. That we've tried that before is notorious. I mean, to anybody listening to there who's had a job as an adult, you've definitely heard, oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, but you know what? Did you try that with me here? Did you try that in this day and age? Like,
right. What didn't work about it?
Yeah.
And then you can't get an answer from that either, because that was what didn't work exactly? It just didn't work.
It didn't work. Yeah. And you're like,
okay.
That's
sure. Yeah, I mean, that's like as time developed, I kind of realized with that particular person, it was just didn't really want to make any sort of change because that affected their career work style kind of thing. So, but it was so funny because it was Sorry, go ahead, Beth.
No, they want completely predictable change that they're in charge of.
Right. Well, and to me, it was kind of funny because it was more like they really pushed for you to kind of be creative and come up with change. But the whole time that I was there, and I was there for quite a long time, there was very, very little, if any, kind of significant change in the organization with that person at the helm. And so, that's what drove, I think, people the most crazy, or were the most frustrated, was like they were encouraging you to come up with change, but not really actually changing. So at all. But that's why, like, I've said it before on this podcast, if you hire somebody or you have an outside consultant or something come in and talk to your business and tell you, here's what the things that are great, you can change because da 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 da, they take it at like face value there. Like, the decision makers are like, oh, well, this person that doesn't really know us or anything about our organization is clearly, looking at the best practices. So we should do what they're saying. Whereas like last week, my coworker just said the same exact change. And they're like, no, we've already tried that. It doesn't work.
You're like, oh, okay.
Okay.
It really, to affect decent change too, it needs to be across the board,
Right.
up and down. Everybody needs to be involved in it, because change is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
There's change like, oh, we brought in Oreos on Wednesday, like,
Right.
and change like, so we need to do layoffs.
Yeah.
One of those changes is different than the other, but it is vital for any success is that there is buy-in in the influencers and in the implementers. So
Right.
who like makes the policy and who actually carries out the policy.
Right. Well, speaking of change, like, and you talked a little bit about this, but like what part of like, the pandemic changed the way that you did things, in your organization? I know a lot of your stuff, most of your stuff was face to face, right?
Yeah.
So, and you talked a little bit about how like, your day long thing, it became a month. So can you talk a little bit about like the differences right now and, if there's any change on the horizon of kind of going back to in person? And
So one of the advantages that we had was we're a distance office. I have office space that's donated in Western New York where I live. My boss has office spaces donated in Situate, which is just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, where she is, and we have an office manager there. But my coworker, my colleague, she and I do with all of the programming. She lives in Orlando. So all of our preparation has been like this. And we've all had home offices,
right.
Which, so that pivot, it wasn't so much of a pivot as so I'm not going to go into the other office. I'm going to stay at the home office, which was nice for us because we don't have brick and mortar payments and deal with that kind of situation. And early on in the pandemic, first there's this has got to be over soon.
Right.
And our conference is in June. We do a lot of training, like right up to it. So my preparation, I'm already starting prepping for 22.
Right.
And so we had a lot of prep already done. And then we made the decision fairly early on to pivot to virtual for SIPSI, for our big conference. A lot of our schools, they weren't thinking forward because they had to deal with the hot mess that was right in front of them.
Yeah.
And, wildly supportive. I was emailing different tools to the teachers that we worked with. I'm like, hey, there's this that you can send as an email to your students to support them, because honestly, we end up loving these people that we work with.
Right.
And then we started doing just quick webinars, like 15 minutes, because nobody has a ton of time, where we'd be like, so try this thing. And we were at that same time, we were like investigating platforms. We ended up settling on Zoom because at the time Zoom had, it was the easiest for non-digital natives to work with.
Right.
And, you know, we had breakout room powers and poll powers, and closed captioning was a big one for us. So we pretty quickly like committed to Zoom and just contacted all of our presenters to say, okay, we are going to run training sessions so you know how to present virtually, and we're going to do dress rehearsals for each of you. At our in-person conference, we have a staff of amazing volunteers. I love more than life itself. Most of the creativity conferences have a group of volunteers that all have names. And so the one, you know, our conference, they're called Wings because we're in Buffalo. And also they fly to your service.
Awesome.
And so I met with the Wings the day that we announced that we were going virtual, and they're like, so what do we do? And I'm like, and they're
creative.
like, yeah, we still want to help. So they offered, and they became our producers. So we introduced every presenter to their wing, and Missy and I, and whichever wing was on, would be during the conference. We're monitoring for Zoom bombers. We're monitoring for people whose internet is cranky that day and they logged on and then got booted and needed to be brought back in, and scrolling for mics, you know, people not on mute, because they're all like, yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, okay, no, I can talk. And I'm like, no, you can't stop. So that we were lucky that we were able to pivot quickly, go virtual. Almost all of our presenters are like, if you help us, we'll figure this out. And so our presenters tend to be wildly flexible and pretty game for anything.
Right.
And Missy and I were like, we will support you every way that we can. And then the Wings helping to the support, and then a couple extra friends. Zoom at that point had live closed captioning available, but that meant somebody had to be typing it. So we had a couple people like live closed captioning for us. It just astounds me because I'm a pen and pecker.
I type really well, but I don't think I could be translating. I'd never be a court stenographer at all. Like the information would be completely incorrect, you know.
Gibberish.
And the judge said not guilty. Actually, the judge said guilty. Oh, how do I erase on this? Where's the
back up? Is whiteout still a thing?
They look like little organs. Maybe they're playing music there. Stenography, love it. No, I you know, what better way to be creative than to use your creativity to kind of figure out what to do, you know?
Then we started offering 90-minute trainings once Sipsy was done. Like, people are like, hey, one of the biggest things was like, how did you teach people to do virtual sessions? So we started doing dread-free virtual sessions, and then, you know, dread-free virtual sessions the next level with more advanced stuff. And then we're offering being creative on purpose, and then being creative for teachers or people who suddenly found themselves to be teachers, because that was a big population last year, and just offering all kinds of virtual programming. And later on in the year, we had people reaching out like, hey, so this didn't go away. Can you help us?
Well, no, that's great. I mean, what better way to be creative than sort of forced to be creative, you know, kind of talking about one of those exercises that you were just saying, where you like, give me 22 ideas. And like, I mean, in effect, that's what the pandemic did.
Yeah.
Give me all your ideas to be able to do the jobs that we need to do. And, you know, I just love some of the very, it seems like were able to implement these things very quickly, but I love some of the things you came up with to kind of, help lead the way. So,
Yeah, we work wise, like I'm lucky because it is a kind of a small organization, and my boss has wild faith in Missy and I. And she said, anytime she'll see us have like chunks blocked off on our calendar, she's like, don't know what's happening, but I know it's going to be amazing, which like that's the kind of support that we have. Like we'll
right.
come to her and say, we think this is what the world needs. And she's like, all right, make it happen. And then she ropes in our office manager, Jamie, who then figures out all of the hard parts.
Right.
Like, so it shows up on a website and people can register and pay for
Yeah.
it.
But if you didn't have that, I mean, that wouldn't be the right person in your organization. But it's
Yeah.
great that you do, because how many organizations are you aware of that have like a leader that might not be the right fit? And it sounds like your team is really an awesome team, and whether it's small or large isn't what's the most important thing. It's the chemistry.
Yeah.
So, and I've really enjoyed talking to you and learning more about what you do and your team does. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you just are dying to let our listeners know?
I think like what you were saying, like the team. We also have our financial person, Lael, and she's in Virginia. So because like we're all over the place, but really like working as a team, regardless of the size, is so vital. Having team support, being able to put out ideas, half formed kookaloo ideas, and have people, instead of like shooting it down, say, okay, so how would that work? And
Right.
getting that. And yeah, we're lucky that we also really enjoy each other. We have a group chat.
Mhm.
So we'll text each other. Sometimes we'll have like accountability texts where it's like, all right, what's something you're going to do? Because we work in nonprofit, burnout level is
Yeah.
seriously high. And the pandemic has increased our work dramatically. And so my boss is very like concerned with burnout.
Right.
So she's like, it's 5 o'clock, get off your computer, go outside. Who's taking a walk today?
Right.
So she's very protective of our health. And that's the kind of thing that makes for, I've been in jobs and I've seen
Mhm.
people in jobs that don't have team support like that. And it
Right.
makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a very valuable point that you need to find time for yourselves, and you can burn out in any position, but nonprofit in particular, has a high burnout rate. But I've been on large teams, small teams, medium-sized teams, and you know what? I can think of a very very small team that I was on that I would take over a large team any day, just because they work together. It was the best team that I was ever on, so that's part of the reason I think it's skewed, but it doesn't matter if the team is small or large. If they don't work together as a team and they aren't open to creative solutions and problem solving, they're not going to get much of anywhere. They're just going to keep on making the same mistakes. And that's not to say they won't be successful. They'll probably be successful. There are ways to be successful but still be not as awesome or amazing or as successful as you could be if you worked together and just changed a few things. So, well, Beth, it's been great having you on the show. I really do appreciate everything that you're doing, and we'll put all your contact information in the show notes. I urge my listeners to check out the Creative Foundation and connect with Beth and everyone else on her amazing team. Connect with the Beths, both Beths, right? Beth, I have a meeting with the Beths, so I just like applaud everything you're doing. I think it's terrific. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm lucky that I get to do this.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.